Good evening, I'm Shumaisa Rehman and you're watching Analyzed. Today's show is going to be about the significance of Muharram. What is Muharram to the people who are obviously not Muslims? Why is it so significant to all Muslims all around the world? What is the concept of sacrifice that it teaches us? What are the ideas of patience that it instills in us? Why is it relevant to keep these values in mind today, especially given that Pakistan is going through a period where we are seeing a lot of conflicts that are going on right now. So to discuss all of that, we are joined today by two religious scholars, academics. We're joined by Mr. Murtaza Poya Sahab. Assalamu alaikum ji. Thank you very much for taking out the time. We're joined by Dr. Naeem Mushtaq Sahab. Assalamu alaikum ji. Thank you very much. Murtaza Sahab, I'd like to start with you. What does Muharram teach us? What is the significance of Muharram?
Bismi Rabbi Shuhada wa Siddiqeen, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Wassalatu wassalam ala Ashrafil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen, Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi al-muntajabeen. Well, you are trying to encapsulate a very wide subject, but I hope we can help you. Muharram's significance is not just after the Prophet's announcements and his message, but it dates back to all the prophets. And in fact, the first reference to Muharram and to the spirit of sacrifice is done during Hazrat Ibrahim's time. And the Quran says that Hazrat Ibrahim was told that the son that you are sacrificing, we are going to postpone this sacrifice to a great sacrifice. And that is the first reference that we have in the Quran towards Muharram. Now, within the Muslim ethos, 4 months are considered very sacred, in which no wars are allowed, and you should not go to war during. One is Zilhaj, and the other is Muharram, and the one is Shaban and Ramadan. So therefore, it has a very sanctity and significance from time memorial. And one thing one would like to establish is that all our ethos is not just started with Prophet Muhammad. It starts from Hazrat Adam. Now, this spirit of sacrifice is the sublime point where humanity can rise. You are not known by what you acquire. You are evaluated on how much you have sacrificed, whether in terms of ego, whether in terms of wealth, or whether in terms of your own life. Those that are remembered in history are those who have made sacrifices. In our ethos, the mother's sacrifice is so greatly evaluated. Mother makes the sacrifice and looks after children, and we are told that heaven lies under the feet of the mother. So that's the significance of sacrifice. So therefore, the sacrifice during Muharram, it's a continuous process. And the prophets, Muslims are required to observe 3 things.
Okay.
A Muslim is got, first is he follows the dictates of Allah, ita'at ilahi, he follows Allah. And then he emulates Prophet Muhammad. And then he loves the family of the Prophet, mawaddat ali Muhammad. And the sacrifice of Karbala and Ashura and the rest of it, these are all remembered as your attachment to the household of the Prophet. Now, it's not just a filial attachment that you have. It's because Prophet is the ultimate, is the highest in the form of creation. And his Ahl Bayt, his followers, they are supposed to be closest to him in terms of ethos. Ethical proximity is what makes them different from others. And the sacrifice that Imam Hussain rendered at Karbala is remembered because of that. Whereas Muslims were required to honor the Prophet's family, they whatever message he gave, and this is the recompense they gave the Prophet by shahadat of his son. So this is the significance which we are remembered, and we are required to recirculate this every year and see that the humanity's ethos and ethical uplift comes.
Why is it important to remember this every year?
Because of the intensity of the sacrifice, because of the sanctity of the sacrifice, and because it was done in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to please the Prophet. The Prophet had laid a lot of store by Imam Hussain, and he could see that I could not get shahadat. So shahadat in my lineage has come through Imam Hussain. So that is why the message has to be recirculated, because imagine just within a few months and years of the Prophet's demise, the whole one part of the community rebelled in the name of taking over power. So therefore,
that's another interesting point. We're going to come to that as well, for the concept of power.
Power, yes.
Because I want to be able to apply this to what is happening currently in our country.
Please.
Dr. Saab, I'd like to come to you. I think Professor very eloquently explained what is the significance, why it's important, the concept of sacrifice, and that it was done so quickly that something like this happened within a very short span of the Prophet, peace be upon him, passing away. How do we look at this, learn something from it, and apply it to what is happening today?
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for coming.
And it's an honor to be in your program, especially in the presence of Agha Murtaza Poya.
Thank you very much.
I would like to start with this hadith of Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that who is against Hassan and Hussein is against me, and who is against me is against Allah, and who is against Allah will enter into hell. So the concept of sacrifice in Islam is from the Arabic word qurb, which means is to be in close relationship with someone. So when we say the concept of sacrifice in Islam, it means the process of being close with Almighty Allah, the process of being in love with Almighty Allah. That is why the concept of sacrifice in Islam is based on intentions, not the act of sacrifice itself. When it comes to the spirit of Islam and what is happening right now, if you conclude Islamic teachings, we will say the Islam and the Islamic teachings are based on three things. Number one, the concept of Rabbul Alameen. He is the Rabb of Alameen, which means Jews, Christians and other faiths, they are also included in his Alameen. Second thing, the Holy Prophet is Rahmatul lil Alameen, which means he is not only the Prophet of Muslims, he is also the Prophet of Jews, Christian and other faiths. Whether they believe in him or not, this is the separate question.
Okay.
And the third thing is the Holy Quran is the book for the entire mankind. So this is not just for Muslims. If they read it, they follow it, they will get the benefits. And this is what is happening right now. Now, this is the theory, basically. So if you want to see the practical application of these three theoretical concepts, you will find it in the Battle of Karbala.
How?
The reason is this, because as Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, who is against Hassan and Hussein is against me. Which means the entire philosophy of Islam has been delegated to Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein in form of their personality.
Okay.
So whatever actions they were performing in the Battle of Karbala, they were representing Islam, number one.
Okay.
Number two, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein in the Battle of Karbala, they are not just the representative of Islam, they were the representative of humanity. They fought for the truthfulness, they fought for the honesty, they fought for the reliability of religion, they fought for the religious values, they fought for the all universal values that we are talking about in Judaism, Christianity and Islam. So that is why Imam Hussein's status in world literature, Gandhi has spoken on Imam Hussein, the Western scholars, they have spoken on Imam Hussein. And by looking at Imam Hussein's actions in the Battle of Karbala, they say he is not only the representative of Muslim, he is also the representative of my interest, my religious values. So if you go through the biblical literature, if you read the Old Testament, if you read the New Testament, if you go through the 5 books of Moses that are available today, if you read the 4 Gospels of Jesus Christ, and the entire Christian concept is also around the concept of sacrifice.
It is.
The cross and the Jesus Christ. Same continuity is here in the Battle of Imam Hussain, Karbala, the sacrifice. Apart from theological differences, sacrifice is must for the protection of religion, for the protection of religious values. And when this concept is applied in the Battle of Karbala, you will see the protection of religion and religious values as well.
Okay, I want to come to something, Agha Saab. I'd like to come to what you mentioned, power. That power, it's another lesson to learn, that the desire for power, this need, hunger, lust, whatever you want to call it, for
Yes.
power, can result in people behaving in ways that one cannot even imagine.
That's true.
And the reason why I'm touching upon power
Yes.
is because right now we're looking, if we look at the major conflicts that are happening around the world right now, we look at what's happening even within Pakistan, we can see it's power groups and it's a
Ji.
power play.
Yeah.
So how would you relate that?
Well, power, what one believes in is that what Islam has taught us and what Karbala has taught us is the power of piety. The highest form of power should be piety. If you are pious, then you do not treat as you and me. You take the whole world as Dr.
As
was
universal.
saying, as a universal thing.
Okay.
Now, the power of piety and the piety of the powerful. Those who are in power should be powerful. Should be pious.
Should be pious.
Should be pious. Then you treat the world. Now, I was at a lecture in Canada some years ago,
Okay.
and I told my audience, I said, my request to you is to please pause, review, and revise your attitude towards Islam and the Muslims. We are painted as terrorists, as anti-human and everything and all. I said, between the two world wars, 150 million Christians were massacred, and not one of them died at the hands of a Muslim. Our whole effort to get power is to liberate the oppressed people. And it is irrelevant to us whether the oppressed are Muslims, Christians, or Hindus. And if a Muslim is an oppressor, then we hate that oppressor a little more. When I finished talking, there was amongst the audience a delegate from India, a lady, she was a journalist. She says, if this is Islam, then I announce I'm a Muslim. So the question is, you should be, number one, clear in your own mind, what are your beliefs towards God and the Prophet and humanity. Once you're clear in that and you expound that, then you will get support from unimaginable sources. Unimaginable sources. Yes, there is a power play going on, but this power play is only because of those who do not believe in piety as the sine qua non of life. Piety is what you should try to achieve. And once you try piety to achieve, then God blesses your efforts and prevents you from committing crimes and sins. That is the nature of things. So therefore, this whole concept of the present, what we are going through, this is all a secular-oriented war. Secular-oriented wars. And in fact, there's a very nice observation made by the founder of the American University of Beirut.
Okay.
He says we will never succeed in converting Muslims to Christianity. Our effort should be to Muslimize them. Let them not remain Muslims and go towards a secular glorification. And you know, this power and products and economics and the rest of it, but your only desire which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks of to you, and this is the message of Karbala, is only and only work for the acceptance of your efforts by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is the significance which we should never lose at any stage. Otherwise, even as my friend says, he says, it's not just emotions that you are expressing. If there is no correct intent behind your grief, if there's no, and you can do it just for an ego massage.
Okay.
That's of no use really. You can write the best of poetry without really understanding the significance of Karbala and acting according to the pristine principles of Karbala.
Okay, when we're talking about significance, there's a couple of points that have been mentioned. Piety, patience, sacrifice. What are the other things?
Well, patience, if you are patient, then you are prepared for sacrifice.
Okay.
If you're not patient and you react at the slightest provocation, then you have missed the bus really. What you should be really doing is, patience is such an important part, and in fact Hazrat Imam Hussain could have slaughtered his enemies, but he exercised patience. And at the height of the battle, he put back his sword in the scabbard. He says, enough is enough, now to prepare for sacrifice. So therefore the importance.
That's a high level of patience. It's obviously something that I don't think I could or anybody else can achieve. When we're talking about piety, we're talking about patience. The only power that we all subscribe to is God. And, you know, to please Him, that is where our source, our strength comes from. Why do we see a lot of these elements missing in our society these days?
When I teach leadership and management lectures and classes, first thing we do is to clarify the terminology.
Okay.
What do we mean by this word? What do we mean by this word? Once we are clear on terminology, then we are in a better position to use them in sentences. One thing is missing there, or if I would say, these all things are included in the term worship.
Okay.
What do we mean by the word worship? It is stated in the Holy Quran that I created jinn and men for the sake of worship only. And traditionally people think worship means is to say salah 5 times a day, or to read Holy Quran and go to the mosque, and that's all. This is worship. But if you go through the Arabic commentaries, especially Imam Fakhruddin Razi, he says the concept of worship in Islam is not just going to the mosque 5 times a day. Rather, the concept of worship, the term worship means this is linked with the development of the society and the development of the human beings, regardless of their race, color and creed. So if a Muslim is serving in the society with focus on peace and development, he is performing worship. Worship is not just 5 times a day. Each and every moment of your life can become a worship if you focus on the development of society, whether he's a Muslim, Jew,
so
Christian.
Again, you see, so what you're also saying is that, again, focusing on the development of society means that you're focusing on the betterment of humanity and mankind.
Exactly.
And in doing that, you are actually worshipping God.
Worshipping God. That's why Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the entire universe is Allah's family, and the best among you is he who is good to his family. And when he said his family, it means in his family Jews, Christian, Hindus, atheists are all included. So as a Muslim, this is my responsibility to help my fellow community members, whether they are Jews, Christian or not. This is my Muslim duty to make sure that I share their pain and suffering. And this is the same exact message that you will see in the 4 Gospels in the Christian faith, that on the Day of Judgment, Jesus said a man will come to the God for his, that I've done so many good things in life. And the God will say, I was thirsty, you did not give me a glass of water.
You did not give me water.
And he said, how this is possible, you are God. And then he said, I was hungry, you didn't feed me. He said, how this is possible? So the God will say, a man near you was thirsty and hungry. If you had fed him, you had fed me. Exactly same quotation, same parable of Jesus Christ is mentioned in Mishkat, in the book of Hadith by Holy Prophet Muhammad. And similarly, there are many quotations in the Holy Quran, in the Holy Bible. The problem is this: we are trying to understand Islam today through a Maulvi and Mullah. We are not directly reading the Holy Quran and the Hadith of Holy Prophet Muhammad. The genuine Islam, you have to search for the genuine Islam today. Books written in Pakistan right now that are being taught in universities and are available in the market, explaining Islam, are usually written by extremists who want to support their lobbies for different purposes. But if you read the classical literature, you will find a different thought pattern. I mean, Holy Prophet, nowadays books written on Siratul Nabi, on Holy Prophet Muhammad, they say this is our prophet. Whereas Holy Quran say he is everyone's prophet. It is not, that's why the concept of Ummah in Islam is different than what you hear today. The real concept of Ummah is that when it is said in the Holy Quran that he is the mercy for the whole mankind, and the scholars and commentators say whole mankind includes both Muslims and non-Muslims. So that part of mankind who accepted his message became Muslims, and the other part who are still trying to understand his message are non-Muslims. But they are both are his Ummah, and he is the prophet of both Ummah. So the one who accepted Islam has a responsibility towards those who are in the process of understanding Islam.
Okay, Asaf, I'd like to come to you. If you could, I think you'd be a better person. If you could explain to our audience the events that led up to what happened in Karbala, the history behind it, and why what happened.
You see, Muslim history, I would make a distinction between Islamic history and Muslim history.
Okay.
Muslim history unfortunately degenerated very quickly after the demise of the Prophet, after his passing away. Certain political troubles erupted. Certain political differences of point of view as to who should be the successor of the Prophet. One school of thought believes that the Prophet school of thought believes that Hazrat Ali was the rightful heir, and therefore he should have been given that, and nobody should have intervened in between. That's one part of the part. But that even that much of the usurpation of power that took place immediately after the Prophet's demise degenerated into what Maulana Maududi writes, Khilafat or Mulukiyat. That Khilafat degenerated into aristocracy, Mulukiyat, and people started assigning themselves, and this was the period of Muawiyah, and after Muawiyah, Yazid came. And then of all the significance, you see, there's Dr. Tariq Jamil, if you have come across him, he's a great scholar. And he narrates, he says, in my reading of history, one of the most patient caliphs was the son of Yazid, Muawiyah ibn Yazid, who rejected the caliphate. He says, this is rightfully belongs to the Prophet's family. We had no right to it, and he returned it. And few days later, he was poisoned to death. So therefore, this is Muslim history. Unfortunately, what Karbala does is makes you try to reform history.
Okay, that's an interesting.
You should go back to the pristine requirements of Islam and Muslims, and piety is the most important. You should reject anybody. You should not accept anybody who is not pious. You should not accept anybody who, and say, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Only those amongst you are worthy of being looked up to, and only those are close to God who are pious. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Only look for the pious amongst you and adhere to them, listen to them, obey them, and those are the ones that can prevent bloodshed in this earth. And as my friend has been saying, it's humanity as a whole which is encompassed. The Quran starts with Bismillah and ends with An-Nas, which is humanity. So our responsibility in preaching this message of Karbala is to prepare ourselves for that universal outlook in life, that you should, number one, you should obey only the pious amongst you. Only obey the pious amongst you.
So that also then leads to, when we go and cast our vote, even when we're electing somebody into office, we should make sure that they are
elect the most pious.
The most pious.
But unfortunately, the electoral process, not only in Pakistan but everywhere, has degenerated into an absolute manipulated game. And therefore, I belong to Dr. Tahir al-Qadri's school of thought, and we believe that we should do away with this entire corrupt system, manipulated system, and go for a system that encourages an Islamic ethos, a divine ethos. And that's the only way corruption can end. Now, this current phase that has gone on in Pakistan and around Pakistan, unfortunately, our friends who are now changing a little bit, there's a change of heart in the United States. Fortunately, after 35, 40 years of subjecting this entire area to tyranny, absolutely, terror and tyranny, that is now changing, and thank God for that. They are going to espouse, in my opinion, I think it's a great change that is coming in America, and they are going to espouse a divine ethos. The divine ethos which my friend talks about, Christianity, Judaism. You will find Jews, today we treat the Jews as absolute anathema. No, right. They are amongst the Jews also people who are better than some of those who profess they are Muslims. So therefore, we should look for the right value system. We should look for a system which is imbibed with a divine ethos rather than secularism. Secularism, unfortunately, pits man against man because it's avaricious. Secularism espouses existence, whereas religion and Islam espouses sacrifice and obliteration of your human self. That when you die, the shaheed continues to live, and he continues to be fed. He earns risk. So therefore, the stage of being a shaheed is a very high stage. You not only have enough for yourself, you also bequeath to others.
These are very strong words, and I'm trying to process this. But Agha Sahab, I'll come to you as well, Doctor. But Agha Sahab, I really wanted, if you could explain to the audiences, we've talked about the significance of Karbala. We've discussed humanity, why it's important. But a question a lot of my friends who are who are foreigners, they often ask, they say, well, were Imam Hassan, Imam Hussain, their families, were they aware of the events that were going to happen?
Not only aware, they even had been foretold in their psyche that this is what we have been created for sacrifice. They espouse sacrifice, just as Imam Hussain says, and Imam Hassan both are attributed to having said, we love death as much as a child loves the mother's bosom. That's how much we espouse death, because we are clear in our mind, and only he can be clear in his mind that he espouses death, is who is truthful, who believes in God subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he is absolutely calm and quiet. Death is irrelevant to them. Death is, instead they said, either death will hit us or we will go and fall on death. So they espouse death because it takes them to the asal real purpose of creation. You have been created, this is a very temporary world, 40 years, 50 years, 100 years, 120 years. So real life is the life hereafter, and that is what you should espouse, and you should.
So that's another point that you raise, which I think is very important, which is that one should realize that life is temporary. And that is another thing that is brought up in this, that even knowing that you're going towards death, you're okay with that because you realize that the greater life is not here.
Exactly.
This is a short period. Yes, please.
For a Muslim, death is not the destination. It's just a door.
Okay.
In other theology, maybe this is the end. That's why they are afraid of it. But in Islam, I would say, how should I put it there? Okay, maybe adding to Aga Murtada Puja Sahab, sometimes there is a question of interpretation, and sometimes there is a question of understanding. In most of the cases, in the Battle of Karbala and the Imam Hussain, a lot of interpretation and perceptions are involved. So if one wants to understand the real, genuine, I would say, climax or the contribution of Imam Hussain, he should first study Quran and Sunnah, because that is the practical application of Quran and Sunnah which you see in the Battle of Karbala. I will, for example, for my diplomat friends, there are books written in Pakistan that whatever America is doing in Pakistan or in Afghanistan, on the basis of that, Christianity is a religion of terrorism. This has been written in the books. And in my previous books I said, if what America did, the Christianity should be held responsible, then what other Muslim countries are doing, Quran and Sunnah should be held responsible. The basis of Christianity is the text of the Holy Bible, not the foreign policy of US.
Very good, very good.
The basis of Islam is the text of the Quran and Sunnah, not the foreign policy of Pakistan or what Muslims are doing in Muslim countries. So in the same sense, if you want to understand what Imam Hussain really did, don't read it historically, read it theologically. Because each and every word uttered by Imam Hussain and his family has a theological basis in Islam.
For instance?
For example, whatever he replied to the Yazid, whatever he replied to the soldiers at that time, he was thinking of Islam before his reply. That I am the representative of Holy Prophet Muhammad. As I started my talk with this hadith, whoever is against Hassan and Hussain is against me, Holy Prophet Muhammad, and who is against Holy Prophet Muhammad is against Allah. So he was not only representing Holy Prophet Muhammad in the Battle of Karbala, he was the representative of Allah himself through that family. So in Islamic theology, we say, if you want to understand Allah, his nature, his message, you should study the personality of Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But if you want to study the personality of Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you should study his family's personalities, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussain, Fatima. Through his family, you will see the hidden aspect of Holy Prophet Muhammad's personality. And if you want to understand the Ahle Bayt's personality, then you should study the Khulafai Rashidin's family, their family and their character. So these are all linked with one another. My point is this, as I mentioned the Christian the examples, sometimes we are lost in interpretations, we are lost in perceptions of our mullahs and our historians. They may not give us the true picture. The genuine picture, each and every sentence uttered by Imam Hussain, the speech of Hazrat Zainab in the Darbar of Yazid, if you analyze that speech word by word, each and every word is actually explanation of the verse of the Holy Quran.
I have not analyzed the speech, but Agha Sahab, I'm sure you would be able to shed some light on this.
Well, in the sense that what doctor is referring to is that Bibi Zainab, instead of becoming heartbroken at the shahadat of her brother, she became stronger, and it became her responsibility to spread the message of Karbala. And she took on the infamous Yazid so directly that his caliphate practically ended that same day, and it ended because nobody expected him to stand up. And what did Yazid say? When Yazid said Hazrat Imam Hussain has been shaheed, he says, we have managed there to take revenge of Badr, where his ancestors had been killed by the Prophet. Just imagine. So therefore he was espousing a totally wrong line of thinking and everything. He had no right to be where he was at all. And Imam Hussain said, if we do not enact, if Karbala is not enacted, then Islam is going to be overtaken by people like Yazid. And till today the biggest problem we have is how to fight the Taghut, who is irresponsible, who is unjust, and how to fight tyranny and injustice. And we are fighting tyranny and injustice. And there is a controversy going on nowadays as who is a shaheed and who is not a shaheed.
Yes, that is a huge controversy.
Yes. Now the question is, only he is a shaheed who sacrifices, who lives a way of life of piety, and who sacrifices his life in the name of Allah and Prophet and Ali Muhammad. He is a shaheed. The rest, we are all, we are victims of politics and the rest of it. That's irrelevant. The important thing is to make piety and justice. Piety and justice should be the sine qua non of your life. And if you're not pious, you can never be just. And in fact, the Quran says very clearly, "I'dalu," do justice, for that is the closest thing to piety. The closest thing to piety is justice. So we should strive to be just, and this is what the message of Karbala is, that wherever you find people, dispossessed people, fight for their rights. You are only asked to do jihad to restore the rights of the dispossessed, not a dispossessed Muslim only, a dispossessed, whether he's human being. You should fight for him and give your sacrifice for him life, so that his dispossession status ends and he becomes possessed. And possessed means the most important possession is faith. It's not just the material thing that you should possess. It's the faith, and important thing is to give the message of faith, and this is where Karbala scores over all other events in Muslim history. In all events of Muslim history are foreshadowed by Karbala. And Karbala's message is try to inculcate within you the ethos of humanity and the ethos of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I'm so glad I'm doing this show, Dr. Saab. Even I'm learning, because I'd always read, you know what I mean? You read about it, you hear about it as you're growing up as a young child. But I never looked into the event of Karbala with so much, I think, minute detail, where there was so many theologically important things that come out of it. And I could continue with this discussion. Another thing that comes up in my mind is the concept of courage.
Yes, very important.
Immense. It's a huge thing. Immense courage in the face of adversity.
In leadership and management sciences, they say the courage comes when you are conceptually clear.
Okay.
A confused person cannot possess courage.
Okay.
So
would you agree with that, Agha Sahab?
Yes, why not? Of course.
Okay.
So when
I like that. A confused person cannot have courage.
courageous.
Okay.
Because courage demands conceptual clarity to stand up for what you
believe
in. Because when you will face no, in the salesmanship, if you are not clear on your product, the market knows will turn your motivation into something else. When I said earlier, the each and every word of Hazrat Bibi Zainab Razillah Ta'ala anha, you can find it in the Quran. What I mean by that, like when I presented my paper in the United Nations on the human rights issue, so each and every article of human rights, I compared it with Quranic teachings. That this is your article and this is the verse of Quran and the meanings are the same. So the Quran supports international declaration of human rights. In the same way, if you compare the meaning of the message or the meaning of the speech of Hazrat Sayyidah Zainab Razillah Ta'ala anhu with the Quranic message, you will not find any contradiction. This is what I mean. The courage you see in the Battle of Karbala, the courage in the Imam Hussain, the courage is there because, as Murtaza Poya Sahab said, they were conceptually very clear what they are doing at that time. Each and every moment, each and every word is not a part of accident at that time. They were crystal clear what they are going to say. They were crystal clear
in what they were doing,
what
the intent was, everything with absolute clarity.
Such courage cannot come if such clarity is not there, because there are 1,000 tactics available from the evil forces to make them realize they are doing wrong. So if there are 1,000 tactics from the other side, and if there are 1,000 I would say if they are not linked directly at that time spiritually with Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even in the Quran Pak, if you read Surah Yusuf and the Zulaikha's Qissa, the commentators say when that event was going on with Zulaikha, Hazrat Yaqub alayhi salam communicated to Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam spiritually to take care of this moment. So that's why he was saved, because of the spiritual assistance to Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam.
Hazrat Yaqub.
Hazrat Yaqub alayhi salam. Similarly, if that time the father's spiritual assistance was present there, don't we think at the time of Karbala, Imam Hussain was having the spiritual assistance and connection at that time with the entire family, with Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So that spiritual courage, when we speak the word courage, we usually mean intellectual courage, but then there are different kinds of courage. There is one intellectual courage, there is one spiritual courage, then one emotional courage. All these three types of courage, the connection and the support was available to Imam Hussain and his entire family in the Battle of Karbala. And that connection gave them the courage, maintained their courage in the Battle of Karbala. This is what I mean.
Okay, well, that was very insightful for me at least. I'm running out of time. Ahmad Sahab, my final question would be to you. I think we've sort of tried to cover a very vast topic in a very short period of time, and we've tried to do the best that we can. Aside from the concept, there's piety, patience, courage, strength, there's all these lessons that we're learning. Why do we see, this is something I would want to touch upon very sort of carefully. This is an event which is significant to all Muslims. Yet we see that at this time of the year, generally, we see a lot of sectarian violence happen. What is it that we are not teaching our children or other people that they would resort to these kind of things?
Well,
because we're talking about patience.
Patience. Any case, number one. If God forbid somebody is made shaheed, nobody has a right to take revenge, and that is nobody has a right to take revenge. But justice must be meted out. Unfortunately,
I thought it was always an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
No, that's one alliteration which is attributed to Christian ethos or whatever it is. That's one thing. Question is, how patient are you in your grief? If you have been bereaved and somebody from your family has been shaheed, you have no right to go and take revenge. It's the state. It's the state, and unfortunately, in Pakistan, the state has failed to mete out punishment to identified criminals. This is the sad part, and unidentified criminals who proclaim that yes, we committed this sectarian tension, or we have committed this sectarian
not just sectarian, people who have actually been taken to court for, terrorist attacks.
Yes, yes.
Across the board on everyone.
And there is a section of people who treats them as heroes. The sad part is that, and the state whose primary responsibility is to mete punishment out, because if an identified criminal is not punished, then you're encouraging terrorism.
I agree, Afza, but the counter thing to that is I've spoken to law enforcement agencies, I've spoken to people in the judicial system. They say generally when a person is brought to court, the evidence somehow is not adequate, or the people who can testify will suddenly disappear.
Yeah, agreed.
So they said,
there
how
may be
can
lapses,
we?
but if they had been meting out punishment summarily to those that they know have committed the crimes and identified as criminals, no criminal would have had so much of courage as much he is having now. Now he knows that he's going to, one person kills one person. He goes and books his name, yeah, mere 10 jagah naam likh do. I can't be punished 10 times, I'll be punished once. So therefore, I think we require revamping.
So justice.
Absolutely, we require revamping of our social, political status. We are completely on the wrong track. We were created in the name of Islam. Everybody proudly says so. But Islam hasn't come anywhere near us in its pristine form. These are just, we are just living in a fairy world that we are Muslims and this and that, nothing. The crimes committed by Muslims, unfortunately, especially the powerful Muslims, so-called powerful Muslims, is abhorring. Their crimes against humanity should not go unpunished, and whoever has committed crimes against humanity should be punished, whether it's the US, whether it's anybody else. If I have committed a crime, let me be punished first, and punishment is the only, and that is where, that if punishment is avoided, then you are encouraging terrorism and injustice. So therefore, justice demands that it should be meted out summarily and quickly.
Well, thank you very much for having
been
taken
a
out the
pleasure.
time. And thank you very much as well, Dr. Safar, for having taken
God
out the time.
bless you, inshallah.
Thank
I hope
you, inshallah.
we have been of some use too.
Well, clearly I've learned a lot, and I'm thinking if I have, then the people who are watching, inshallah, have hopefully seen a different side, a different perspective, a different analysis. I can say for myself, and I have no shame in saying this, that I had never actually looked at the event of Karbala in so many different aspects as I have learnt today, from the theoretical side, from the theological side, from the concept of patience, sacrifice, courage, giving. It has been extremely, extremely informative for me, and as always, I truly hope Pakistan is headed towards a better, more prosperous, brighter future. Thank you for watching. See you next time.